Motors, Massachusetts Incorporated, to amend the Class 1 grant of license. I know Mr. DeLuca is here for this item. Ms. White or Mr. DeLuca, do you want to take the lead or just sort of set up the conversation? I know we have folks here from Tesla, and there might be other interested members in the audience to speak to this matter.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a matter that came before your board some number of months ago with a request that was made by Tesla Motors to get a Class 1 license to sell automobiles here in Natick. The original application was considered by the planning board as well, since they sought space at the Natick Mall. There was some review by the planning board to determine whether or not they would amend their site plan to allow a display of automobiles at that location. And they did, in fact, agree to amend the plan on file to permit that. But it did not allow for sale of automobiles at that location. Therefore, the consideration of your board for the Class 1 license was delayed or suspended until Tesla was able to do some more work with respect to obtaining adequate space, not just for display, but for the sale and repair of automobiles that's required under the statute. So I at your request, reviewed the statutes, the relevant statutes. That's chapter, it's chapter 140, section 58 and 59, that provides for municipalities to license automobile dealers in their communities. That it's necessary, obviously, that there be a premise licensed. And in that way, Tesla has now pursued a location in Natick conduct their sales apart from display space at Natick Mall. And they've also, I understand, secured repair facilities in Watertown in compliance with the statute. Now, overlay with all of that, other automobile dealers have raised some objection to the license that's sought by Tesla. They have brought litigation against Tesla that is ongoing, and I know they're here to speak on their own behalf relative to their concerns about this license that's sought. And I've explained to all parties that the Board of Selectmen, as I understand it, are as much concerned with making sure the standards of the statute are met and ultimately to act in the public interest. It's not as much a contest that can play out in the courts. That litigation that they have filed will be ongoing. It's this board's concern to consider the application for a license and to judge it on what is in the best public interest. So with that, I know that Tesla has representatives here to provide some more detailed information about their request, and I believe they also have some material to provide to you. And I do know the automobile dealers are represented and would like to be heard as well.
Absolutely. Okay, before I invite members of the audience to come up, are there any initial comments by members of the board? What we'd like to hear from them. Okay, so if the gentleman from Tesla can speak first.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Richard Campbell. I'm an attorney here in Massachusetts, from Boston, and I represent Tesla, particularly with respect to the litigation that was brought in the Norfolk Superior Court. I have prepared a statement. It's really just a 3-page statement. Don't be frightened by the binder. But the purpose.
You don't frighten me.
The purpose of the statement really was to aggregate in one place the relevant documents and materials that have been supplied. Most of these documents have been supplied to the board over time. Mm-hmm. This puts it in one place, easy to find, and I would like to submit it for the record.
Please, if you wouldn't mind, to Ms. Chalice or Executive Assistant. I would like to state before you begin presenting that, I want to be very careful for this conversation for both sides of the discussion that we stick to the issue of the request for the Class 1 license and its location. Obviously, there are matters being litigated at this point that's beyond the purview of this board, as Mr. DeLuca had raised. So I will keep the conversation very narrowly focused on the explicit request that's under consideration.
I have an extra copy of this for each member of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Blankenship will be the first person to speak on behalf of the customer.
Thank you. Please.
A minute. If I could just have a day to read this before he.
Thank you.
Another tree gone.
Please, and again, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself for folks at home.
Certainly.
Thank you.
My name is George Blankenship. I'm Vice President of Sales and Ownership Experience for Tesla Motors. And I will move through this fairly quickly. I appreciate your time and attention tonight. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so I'll move fairly quickly. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to slow down and expand any further on any issue that you would like. First, I'd like to take a quick minute to just give a snapshot of where we are. As many of you know, we opened up our gallery in Natick Mall on September 28th. Some of you were gracious enough to stop by for our opening, and we appreciate that. As was indicated, we have a location that we've leased at 251 West Central, okay, and that would be for our sales license for the Class 1 that we're talking about. We also have a Watertown service facility that's right over by Watertown Square. Service to us is very, very important. This year we opened twice as many service locations in North America as we did stores. So service is very, very important to us. I'd like to take a minute and just explain a little bit about us as a company and then how it relates to the Natick market and why we're here. We as a company are different than most companies, and we acknowledge that. We are in business for a different purpose. Our chairman, our CEO, Elon Musk, has us in business for a completely different reason. It's really focused on the adoption of EVs. That's what it's about, and it's a very different business. And our goal to advance EVs to get us off the dependence of oil pushes us in a bit of a different direction sometimes in the way business has been done in the auto industry for the last 100 years. And we realize that the only way to get people to shift is to give them a product that is as good as or better than what they have currently as an alternative. So that's what we've set out to do. So first you need a product, and then you need a way to explain it to people. And then you need to do something that maybe is even a little bit more special. And so that's what we're trying to do in Natick. Okay, let me start this way. First,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just for folks that might not know, EV is for electric vehicle.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes,
So
I'm sorry. How many people are here with Tesla tonight? Okay.
understood there, but for
Got it.
the,
Okay.
for the people that couldn't be bothered watching the Patriots on Monday Night Football at
Yeah,
home,
exactly.
we want to make sure
I'm
they
getting to Monday
understand.
Night Football too.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
No problem. Marketing, I appreciate the acronym thing.
Don't remind people they have an alternative of what to watch on TV.
Yeah. So we start with the product, and our car, Model S, that's actually delivering now, it's an award-winning product. I mean, it won Yahoo Auto's Car of the Year, it won Automobile Magazine Car of the Year, it won Time Magazine Innovation of the Year, it won Popular Science, Popular Mechanics Awards of the Year for automotive excellence. And then on top of that, we won Motor Trend Car of the Year this year, okay, which is like one of the cornerstones of the auto industry. So we have the product. And then how do you differentiate yourself when you have a great product from the way other things are being done? Well, you do something that really is to the core of how you are as a company. And when you look at us as a company, what we're really thinking about is your children, your grandchildren, their children. So if you want to really make a difference, you have to also demonstrate that as your actions. So we demonstrated that in October by announcing what we call a supercharger network. And I won't spend a lot of time on it. But I think it demonstrates that we are different, and we put our money where our mouth is. The supercharger network, what it is one of the hangs-ups that people have with an electric vehicle is that it takes a long time to charge. So if you're going to take a trip, you're going to go see your family in New York, you're going to go see your family in Washington, D.C., you need a place you want to be able to charge quickly. So we announced Supercharger Network. You can get a half a charge in 30 minutes. So you can get 150 miles of charge in 30 minutes as opposed to having to wait 4, 5, 6 hours. Okay, that's technology. But how do you demonstrate that you really are trying to do something different? You give it away for free. Free. So that means you can go and you can drive to New York for free in our car. You can drive to Washington, D.C. for free in our car. And how important is the Boston and the Massachusetts market to us in this corridor? Natick Mall is the first gallery we have opened in New England. That's how important it is to us. And we have 6 superchargers up and running now in New York, or in California. What's the next corridor we're doing? Boston to DC. That's the next corridor we're doing for free. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I want to get it across that what we really are doing here is different, and we're putting things into place with a car that's great and a way to go see your family in New York or do business in New York or Washington, D.C. for free. And I don't see other companies giving away that type of thing. So we really are in this for something different. I think what's important is we need to be good for the local economy. I think that's really, really important. I just saw on the board here that GGP is your #1 taxpayer in Natick. And if I looked at it correctly, and I believe, I'm not sure if the lady's still here, but I believe as I looked at it, they're 4 to 1. They're 4 times as high as the next one. So it is important to Natick that Natick Mall be vibrant. And the way a mall stays vibrant in the industry, and we have Liz right here and the operations manager from Natick, they're here with us tonight. The way you keep a mall vibrant is to keep it forward-thinking, keep it ahead of others. And so that's why we came to Natick. It's our first location in New England. That's important, and it's important to Natick that the mall stay vibrant. Our gallery here is one of the best ones we have. Last week, we had 8,600 people go through our gallery in 1 week. We opened on September 28th, and September 28th, when some of you visited us, we've had 76,692 people go through our little store over here. Our gallery has had 76,000 people go through it. It's extraordinary. It's one of the best we have. Jobs. We have hired people to work in our gallery, people to work in a service center, people to work at West Central over there. We spent over $800,000 building our store in Natick Mall. We've hired additional people for the Christmas season. So we're solid citizens here. We actually have some incredible customers that are here as well. Some of them are actually here tonight. And you have to be dedicated to come to something like this when the Patriots are playing on Monday Night Football. So our customers are like really, really important to us. And I think the last thing I'd like to do, because I do want to keep this moving, is that I just want to say that we are compliant with law. We do. You have asked us very, very specifically, and the law has asked us very, very specifically to do certain things in a certain way. And we have paid 100% attention to everything you've asked. You've asked that we open a gallery, not open a store. You've asked that if we would like to have a license to go somewhere else, and we have. Our employees, and we have our store manager here, and we got a regional manager, we got people here from our service team. We've got product specialists here who were hired who have future careers with Tesla, which is really, really bright because we're growing quickly. As far as the law goes, we actually have our employees sign a document when they come to work for us at the Natick Gallery saying they won't do any of the things that you have prohibited us from doing. They are 100% compliant. We're hoping that you will understand that we are compliant with the law. We will continue to be compliant with the law. And as was stated, we have battled a little bit with the Auto Dealers Association, and it was determined that that's not something we're going to really talk much about tonight. I'll leave that for the attorneys to do. I think what I'd like to just close with is that I'd like you to understand that we are different, and we're trying to do something really, really great here in Natick. We're doing it differently than we do other places. We don't have a separate West Central Avenue location anywhere else. We haven't done that anywhere. Anywhere. We're doing it specifically for Natick. We went into the mall and we spent over $1 million in the local economy here. And we're trying to figure out a way to get people to move to a different mode of transportation. You have to do that in a different way. And that's what we're doing. So our request is that you think about this. We are an American car company. We opened up a factory that had been shuttered, and we provided thousands of jobs in a local area somewhere else. So not only is this good for Natick, it's good for another neighborhood as well. So thank you very much for your time. I'm here for the duration if you have any other follow-up questions, and we seriously hope that you will consider our Class 1 license application, and we appreciate your time and effort on it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before I continue and invite others to speak, Mr. DeLuca, if I don't want to put you on the spot, I could take a crack at it. We do have a letter in our correspondence here sort of summarizing the legal status. Could you maybe give an overview of where that stands, just so, when we have, if we have additional conversation in support or any conversation from the dealers, that gives us at least some kind of a framework to have that conversation within. You maybe summarize the three-pager that's here?
The relevant statutes are, as I said, Chapter 140, Section 58 and 59. And they're statutes that have been on the books for a long, long time. And they are intended to protect the public and require certain basic elements. And that is that there be separation between manufacturer and dealer. That is, it's not permissible in Massachusetts that a manufacturer sell directly to the public. There must be an agency agreement established between a manufacturer and a dealer in order to sell to the public. The second requirement is that there be a place of sale for the traditional incidentals of sale to be conducted. So, for example, if you've ever had the opportunity to buy an automobile, there's something called a sales contract. Well, that needs to be filled out in some detail and quite in conformity with the statute. The Attorney General regulations speak very directly to the nature of that contract and what it's required. That has to be executed someplace. That's the touchstone that we have been looking at as a determination of where the premises of sale would be located, wherever that contract is worked out. And the third thing that's required is that anyone that holds a Class 1 license must make available repair facilities so that a consumer of an automobile would have some place to go to if they had a complaint with the product. Those are the three basic elements that are required for any Class 1 dealer. Now, historically, they have been dealerships that you're familiar with, bricks and mortar, that are places of business where all three things occur in one place. This is a little bit different model than I think this board has seen, and perhaps other municipalities as well, where essentially the model is that the display is happening someplace, the sale is happening a second place, and the repair facilities yet a third location. Different from what you as a board might be accustomed to, but then again, 2012, things get done a little bit differently. And as I understand, quite a bit of the work that's done insofar as the sale is done actually online. So there's not the same kind of interaction you might be accustomed to, but I don't know that it's not necessarily in conformity with the statute. I'm more concerned with making sure that the elements of the statute have been complied with. I think we have in the record some evidence of the fact, in fact, we've got solid evidence of the fact that there's been an incorporation of a Tesla Motors Massachusetts to act as that dealer agent from the manufacturer. And there's also, in the record, signed leases of the location for the sale and location for the repair facilities. Those we made sure of before we came back here, well, they came back here, that there would be in conformity with those elements of the statute. Beyond that, as I said, public good is what should guide this board in terms of whether or not license would be issued.
Thank you. Appreciate that. At that point, any other members of the public wishing to be heard on the matter?
If I could just take a few moments. Again, my name is Richard Campbell, and I am counsel to Tesla, particularly with respect to the litigation that was brought literally on the eve of the last scheduled hearing of this board, the last scheduled hearing where the Tesla application for Class 1 license was set for the 29th. The lawsuit was filed a few days before that, and an application for injunctive relief was presented to the court with a hearing on October 25th. I have incorporated into that binder that you have before you on the last tab a copy of Judge Fishman's decision on the application for injunctive relief. So if you choose to have an understanding of what the Superior Court had to say about the dealer's complaint against Tesla, you'll be free to read it on your own. The short answer to it is that the Superior Court found that the plaintiffs, including the Massachusetts State Dealers Association, lacked standing, that is, lacked the right to bring a lawsuit under our statute, under the statute that they cited, Chapter 93B. But let me not get off on that because, as Mr. DeLuca had pointed out, that case is pending. We have motions to dismiss before Judge Fishman unless he changes his mind about standing. The very strong likelihood is that that case will be completely dismissed. But time will tell. I won't try to break out a crystal ball and decide what Judge Fishman is going to do. Let me address the two statutes, or the two sections of the one statute that really animate your consideration of a Class 1 license. The first is General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 58. Under that statute, the criteria for a Class 1 license are as follows. One, that the applicant is a recognized agent of a motor vehicle manufacturer, a recognized agent of a motor vehicle manufacturer, or is a seller of motor vehicles made by a manufacturer whose authority to sell the vehicles is evidenced by a written contract. So under the statute, the first criterion, a recognized agent of a manufacturer is a proper applicant for a Class 1 license, or somebody who has a contract with the manufacturer to sell. This board, Mr. DeLuca, raised some concerns early on about whether there was a contract relationship with an entity here in Massachusetts with Tesla Motors, Inc. So Tesla Motors Mass, Inc. was created, and you have in your binder a copy of the written agreement between Tesla Motors, Inc. and Tesla Motors Mass, Inc. So the first criteria, the applicant, Tesla Motors Mass, Inc., is a seller of wishes to be a seller of motor vehicles made by Tesla, whose authority to sell the vehicles is set forth in a written contract. Second item under Section 58 is that the applicant must have its principal place of business for the sale of new vehicle. That's what the second lease is all about. That is a leasehold that will be dedicated to the sale of new Tesla S motor vehicles. The third item, and the last of the three items under the statute, requires the applicant to maintain or have access to a repair facility sufficient to satisfy and remain liable for warranty obligations. Tesla has now a facility in Watertown, just outside of Watertown Square on Pleasant Street, about 10 or 11 miles from here. The other statute is Section 59, Chapter 140, Section 59. It's nearly identical in the criteria before this board. First, again, three criteria. First, that the petitioner is a proper person to engage in the business. That harkens back to what I said before. Is it a recognized agent of a motor vehicle manufacturer or selling or wishes to sell motor vehicles pursuant to a written contract? The second element is that the petitioner's business is or will be its principal business, identical to the second element in the other section. And third, that the petitioner has available a place of business suitable for that purpose. So when this board is evaluating whether or not Tesla Motors Mass Inc. is entitled to a Class 1 motor vehicle, a Class 1 license to sell motor vehicles, those are the three criteria before you. And it is important to understand that the Chapter 140, Section 59, I'm sorry, has an included standing provision in it. The statute reads that any person aggrieved by any action of the licensing board or officer refusing to grant or revoking a license would have standing to sue. So an aggrieved person who can bring a lawsuit arising out of this board's action, is someone who made an application for a license or renewal of a license and was rejected. No one else has standing. And the law of the Commonwealth is clear that when the legislature incorporates a standing provision in a statute, it is to the exclusion of all other common law with respect to standing. What am I telling you? This board's decision with respect to this Class 1 license can be the subject matter of an objection or what is called an appeal to the Superior Court by Tesla, but nobody else. Nobody else. So anybody objecting to this application certainly has an absolute right to stand before this board and articulate whatever objections or grounds they have. They have a right to petition this board, but they will have no right to speak before the legislature. So my point in being here is simply to tell you that in my view, the Superior Court action will be dismissed. You have three elegantly simple matters for this board to consider in determining whether or not, in your decision-making authority, Tesla Motors Mass should get a license. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ostroff.
Thank you. I think the council said, referred to standing before the legislature, but I think you meant standing before the courts.
If I misspoke, it's something that I do often. I apologize for that.
Lawyers.
I know, lawyers misspeak all the time.
You
But
have a career in public service. Thank you. So I know I didn't mean to say that, but through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not asking for legal advice in a public meeting. Perhaps Attorney DeLuca could confirm what was said, that should the board grant this license, no one other than Tesla Motors would have standing to appeal it.
I'm familiar with the provision cited by counsel, and it does read exactly that way. That is Section 58, Chapter 140. And I would agree with counsel's assessment that where statute is conferred specifically in a statute, the court would limit it that way. If the statute was silent relative to standing, then there could likely be an objection brought by someone who disagrees with the board's finding here and have that matter heard by the Superior Court. But where it's conferred specifically by statute and it is limited to those persons who have been refused or revoked a request for a license, that's a self-limiting standard of standing as far as this chapter and section is concerned.
Is there no other matter of exposure for the town that we might wish to discuss?
I would never assure the town that you would not be the object of a suit. You certainly could be sued, and it would go through the process, but I think there's good confidence in this language that a suit of that sort would be dismissed.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, would like to speak? And again, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself for folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Board. My name is Robert Stoddard. I'm an economist at Charles River Associates in Boston, and I live in Boston. I have no affiliation with Tesla Motors except for the fact that I recently bought one of their cars. And I wanted to share a few personal facts that may be relevant to your consideration, particularly with respect to the point you raised on public interest. I work in Back Bay. And one Friday afternoon recently, I decided I'd like to go Christmas shopping. And I thought, where shall I go? And Back Bay, of course, is full of fine shops. Instead, I got in my car and drove to the mall at Natick. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to see, once again, the beautiful Model S that was on its way to my house. Now, mine wasn't there, but a beautiful black one was, and great people who could talk about the EVs were there. And after I was done in the store, I spent a couple hours doing Christmas shopping. This is the only store in all of New England where people can come and look at the car. And I will say, not a soul mentioned buying one or putting any money down. They were just excited about electric vehicles. I also mentioned that I'm an economist. I'm one of the people who designs the power markets for New England and the Mid-Atlantic region. And I've had several conversations with the people who run those grids. They're excited by EVs too. They see that electric vehicles represent a real opportunity to manage the electric power grid better, lower the costs of electricity to consumers by effectively controlling loads and allowing integrated renewable resources in a much more sensible way. So electric vehicles serve a broader public interest as well as the narrow interest of getting people to come to Natick. I would say as a third point that while I was at the Natick Mall, Tesla was not the only company displaying cars. There was a display of Cadillacs. There was a display of Kias, I think it was. This all felt very natural inside the mall. After all, these are beautiful cars. Automobiles are something a lot of Americans enjoy looking at and shopping for and experiencing. It felt very natural in that space, and clearly the owner of the Natick Mall feels it is a good part of their offering as well if they would offer Tesla and other competing manufacturers display space. Counsel for the town mentioned it was unusual to have a separation of function. And I would just submit as a fact that IRA Audi sells its cars in Peabody and services their cars in Danvers. So there is precedent for having a split operation in different towns. The final point I would raise is, as an economist, and I do mostly competition economics, where we worry about how people interact, that when you hear a competitor coming in and trying to use a town's or a state's laws to keep someone out, you kind of ought to pay attention to why. In my personal experience buying this car from Tesla, I needed to transact directly with their Palo Alto office. I needed personally to go sit at the RMV and register the car and get the plates and get the stickers. I needed to handle all the interactions with my insurance company separately. These are all functions that normally a fully licensed dealer could have done for me. It would have saved me a day of time and probably about $1,000. Economists call this strategy of delaying Tesla's license raising rivals' costs. And it's a way in which a company that doesn't want to see competition can keep out people that they wouldn't like to be competing against. And I can understand their concern. The Tesla is a fabulous car. The people who service and sell Teslas are great people. I mean, there was a gentleman back here who works in the repair shop. Upon finding out where I lived, he said, I drive right by there. If your car ever needs servicing, I'll just pick it up on the way in. Take it to the store, drop it off at your house on the way back. I have never had an auto dealership pick up my car. And I own Audis and BMWs. So this is a revolutionary model. They create value for the community, attracting people like me to come shop in your stores. They create value for the grid. I don't think they're outside of the space. And certainly as a shopper here in Massachusetts, I would have deeply appreciated having a fully licensed dealership that I could work with. I think what Tesla is proposing today is something that you should consider as promoting not only the interest of Natick, but also the interest of all Massachusetts auto buyers. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, folks, I appreciate that, but let's keep some decorum here, please. Would you like to speak, please? Yes.
Mr. Joseph, if you don't mind, my name is Scott Silverman. I represent the Mass State Auto Dealers Association. I also represent several local car dealerships, including Brigham Gill. Mr. Gill is here in the audience this evening. I also represent Jim Carney, both a town resident and the owner of the Bernardi Automotive Group. I'm here speaking on their behalf as well as the State Dealer Association. And I'd like to both address some of the issues that were raised as well as raise some additional issues that we would like you to consider when evaluating this request for a license. And that's probably the first place that I want to start. We are asking you to evaluate whether or not Tesla Motors, Massachusetts, should be issued a Class 1 license. And the distinction between that and some of the statements here is pretty important. First of all, nothing will prevent anyone going forward from going, even without a license, because they do not have one now, from going over to the Natick Mall and going to visit the showroom and inspecting the Tesla motor vehicles, just as the gentleman just mentioned. However, what they have asked is for the ability to sell vehicles under Massachusetts law. Now, I want to start off by saying that it's very obvious that we could be perceived, and as existing new car dealers could be perceived as the stick in the mud. I guess maybe another place to start is I love my iPhone. My kids have an iPad. I love my iPad. I love gadgets. However, the progress that is involved in generating those innovations has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not Tesla Massachusetts has qualified and met the requirements to have a Class 1 dealership license issued to it. And I say that because much of what you have heard here tonight, other than what Mr. Campbell has stated briefly, in somewhat of a conclusory fashion, has anything to do with the elements that are required. We don't debate the fact that they have created a great product. What we have a problem with is they want the town of Natick to overlook the requirements that are in place and the laws as they exist to give them a license to sell. They could address the issues very easily, but they haven't at this point in time. Now, I also want to point out that I also represent, as I said, the Mass State Auto Dealers. I represent the IRA Motor Group as well. IRA Audi, that the gentleman mentioned, is not specifically adjacent. Their service facility is not adjacent to their sales facility. I believe it's a half mile down the road, and that's due to some reconfiguration that's going on over in the Danvers Peabody area. As I said, it's about a half mile down the road, but it is owned by an independent dealership. It is not owned by Audi. And that's one of the primary things that I want to address. Now, Mr. Blankenship, I should probably thank him for my iPhone and my kid's iPad, because he comes from Apple, and no one does innovation better than Apple. No one sells better than Apple. And that's part of what was going on here, to sell you on the innovation rather than address the issues of what is required for a Class 1 license. I do want to note, well, there might be a debate, and I have not looked at the sections that were discussed with regard to the right of appeal. The registrar, the Massachusetts registrar, has the ability to, while the initial licensing power is delegated to independent townships and cities, the Mass registrar has the power to revoke a license if the registrar feels that it was improperly issued. Whether it's the Mass State Auto Dealers, another dealer could request that the registrar review it. I realize that was presented in a way to suggest that you can decide to deviate from the law and no one can do anything about it. I can tell you that the Mass State Auto Dealers doesn't have any intent on, the best of my knowledge, suing the town for damages or anything like that. We just want to make sure that everyone's playing by the same rules. And really, this debate should not be occurring here. This debate should be occurring at the State House, because Massachusetts law is very clear. And I want to begin with something that Mr. Blankenship said. He got up and he stated that we've opened our store. We have leased space in the Natick Mall. We have leased space in Watertown. We, as a company, I think he's talking about Tesla Motors, the manufacturer. Because Mr. Blankenship is listed as, I believe he is, I'll just, yes. I believe he's one of the executives at Tesla Motors. And thank you very much. I'll read his Vice President Worldwide Sales and Ownership Experience of Tesla Motors, Inc. That's not who has applied for the license. And despite what Mr. Campbell has stated, talking about the agency relationship and there being a contract, a principal can't be both the principal and an agent. It defies logic. Here, as you might recall,
If I may interrupt for a moment, we're getting into a legal discussion and a legal case here from the standpoint that what, to your point, will most likely be evaluated and decided both in the courts and the legislature. I think we're kind of in agreement that there's some future decisions to be made as far as that goes. Before we proceed, I just want to clarify with town council, in words that you had used, I don't think anyone on this board had asked for or suggested that we consider deviating from the law in what was said. That was a phrase that you used, so I want to be careful about that. I don't think that was ever insinuated or suggested. And the second point, I think I see where you're going with this, and the question I have is, based on the legal definition of an agency relationship, if the agent has a majority owner that is the parent, does that change the fact that it is an agent in the law's eyes?
No, I think the short answer to that is no. And that is, as I reviewed the law and the precedent, so long as the corporate form is maintained, that should be sufficient for licensing purposes. We're all familiar with the possibility that there may be something that is amiss relative to that corporate form, and counsel, may want to take you there. However, I don't believe it's this board's job to begin that investigation. We take papers as they're presented to us in good faith on face value. If there is to be a challenge to that, then there's a proper place for doing that. I don't believe that it's this board's job to begin that under the skin type of investigation that I think is requested.
Thank you. And that's okay. The intent of the comments I made before we started this conversation. I don't want to go there too much further. I'll certainly give you some latitude because I
understand
appreciate
completely.
what you want to, the case you want to present. I understand it, but I also want to be careful we're not getting into the purview of the courts or the legislature.
I understand. And just to address that specifically when you talk about the courts, it's our position, having discussed it with Mr. DeLuca, that the action currently pending in the court did not address at all the Class 1 requirements and whether or not Tesla had complied with the Class 1 requirements. So I'm going to focus just on that. I appreciate exactly what you're saying.
Thank you.
I do want to note just for the record and on this issue, and this is not argument, this just comes from Mr. Blankenship's affidavit, that he did represent in his affidavit that Tesla Motors, Inc. is not the majority owner, it's the sole shareholder. So it owns 100%. And let me, I will go back to, I guess, the beginning. There are two issues that I would like to address. First of all, Tesla is asking the town to give them a license to do something that is prohibited by Massachusetts law. I will spare you a very voluminous document, and I'm not sure who the appropriate person is in this to.
I'll take it to at least as a starting point. If you could explain what it is. Yep.
This is the provision of Massachusetts law that says in unequivocal terms that a manufacturer cannot indirectly or directly own and operate a car dealership. Then moving on to Chapter 140, Section 58. Mr. Campbell represented that Tesla has complied with the three requirements. The three requirements being that they must have authority to sell that is created by a written contract. An agent must be a person whose principal business is the sale of new motor vehicles, and that such dealer maintains or demonstrates access to repair facilities sufficient to meet their obligations. Without delving in too deep into what we have objections with, because some things are certainly more appropriate for the courts, but I have one other document that I would like to provide to you. That's a copy of the document that Tesla asked customers to sign when they initially reserve a vehicle. It is not a motor vehicle purchase contract as required by Massachusetts law. As Mr. DeLuca mentioned, the Attorney General's regulations specifically delineate what is required when a motor vehicle dealer sells a vehicle to a customer. Instead, what you're looking at is a reservation document. And the only thing that I'd like you to focus on so that I could quickly move on to something else is what is the last paragraph of that document. Because when we're talking about the greater good, what we should probably be talking about here is the greater good of Massachusetts citizens and residents of the town of Natick, that if they go to the Natick Mall or if you were to issue a Class 1 license to Tesla to sell motor vehicles, what this says here is that the agreement would be governed by the laws of the state of Florida, and that any dispute must be resolved in the state of California. Now, it's up for debate whether or not that means they want to bypass the Lemon Law or whether they don't want to comply with the AG's regulations, but to date, they have it. Now, going back to the service facility, as I mentioned, and I have been the outside general counsel of the Mass State Auto Dealers for a dozen years, and I say that because I'm fairly familiar with car dealerships. And I believe the Audi dealership that was just referenced represents, to my knowledge, the largest distance between a sales facility and a service facility. And I said it's about a half a mile. What we're talking about here, because I drove it earlier today, is a distance of 17 miles and about a half an hour under any set of traffic conditions to another town that's not in this town's jurisdiction. That is unprecedented here in Massachusetts. So Tesla is asking you to do a couple different things that are unprecedented in Massachusetts. And those relate specifically to the requirements of a Class 1 license. I apologize. Did you have a question?
Thank you. Well, are you finished? I'll take care of asking questions.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, did you have an issue?
Yeah, unprecedented, but where does it say it's not permitted?
Where it says it's not permitted, it doesn't say that it's not permitted. In no uncertain terms does it say that that is not permitted.
Ms. Clough?
Just comment on the distance. I think there perhaps are different routes that you can take. I used to have a client, I'm a consultant, I used to have a client right near where there's on Pleasant Street in Watertown, and it was about 11 miles from Natick to there. So for me to get there back and forth, because I track mileage.
And let's not get into Apple Maps or
No,
how
but,
we're going
you
to do
know,
this.
just
let's,
to-
Everyone can plug it in
Point
their
out
you know,
GPS and we can see how it comes out.
I think there are two
17
things we can all
miles.
agree on. Number one, this is unprecedented on many fronts. And number two, Natick does things differently. We've been told that on many occasions. That bites us sometimes as a community, but I think that's a wonderful opportunity for us as well. So we're considering a lot of firsts here tonight. I respect that, and I
understand.
appreciate the concerns that you raise and that you raise on behalf of your clients.
And I'm going to shortcut my presentation and leave you with one final thought. The presentation that was initially made to the town planning board was, as I'm sure you've been told, that Tesla did not intend to sell any vehicles from the mall. That was then later changed, and they reiterated their application to get a Class 1 license. But one of the, as part of the presentation, Tesla presented its model that it wants to follow throughout the country. And it said that it wanted to, the best way to comfortably engage with lots of people is to interact with them in places where they already go, such as the mall. However, it's very difficult to operate a service center in these types of locations because of the very high rent, lack of space, and parking. There is no exception in the Class 1 license statute for not meeting its requirements because of financial burden. And certainly Mr. Gill and Mr. Carney, if he was here on behalf of Bernardi, would not get any sympathy for asking for a deviation from the technical requirements simply because it costs too much money. And it's our position that setting a precedent that someone not do it the way that it's been done, and setting a precedent that someone can get beyond a black and white prohibition on manufacturer ownership because they're interested in innovation, and the financial burden would be too much otherwise, is not a justification for deviation from the Class 1 requirements. Now, as I said, I wanted to shortcut my presentation. I think there are several different discrepancies between the two entities and the representations that the entities are separate. I know in the initial application, I know I said I would end with that one point, but I did want to point out that the officers of the two companies, 2 out of the 3 officers are the same. They operate from the same offices in California. And the fact is, any agreement between these two companies, because they are controlled by the exact same shareholders, could be changed whimsically and really is a sham of a contract. Thank you, Mr. Yost.
Thank you. Follow up from members of the board, questions? Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
Good evening, Board of Selectmen. My name is Wendy Chua. I'm the manager at the Tesla Natick Gallery. My experience at Tesla has been incredibly invaluable and incomparable. I've been involved in the clean tech industry since I graduated from college, but never have I worked at a company where every single employee at Tesla is so wholly committed, is so entirely passionate about the product as well as the overarching mission of the company itself. What I appreciate most about working for Tesla is the fact that I'm a part of something bigger than myself. I know every day without a doubt that I am impacting the company, the auto industry, as well as the world at large. Since opening the gallery in September, I have seen nothing but positive reactions from customers. People come in and say, "Oh my goodness, we have been waiting so long for you to get here, finally. You know, we've been waiting years. Finally, you have a brick and mortar store here, or a gallery." And we have newcomers, people who've never heard of Tesla before, just walking by the store. They stop inside, and then the next week you'll see them. They'll be bringing their friends, their family, their kids, their children, into the store and showing them the technology that they learned just the week prior. We've had customers almost brought to tears because they realize that owning a Model S will not only impact their children's lives, but their grandchildren's lives, that we need to wean ourselves off of gasoline. We can't pollute anymore, and that they want to be the catalyst to an energy-independent future. I have a team of 9 incredibly bright and passionate team members. They're actually in the audience right now. And a group of wonderful young men and women who work in the Natick Gallery. And each of them comes into work every day ready to engage with thousands of customers. As Mr. Blankenship was mentioning, thousands and thousands. We actually had over 12,000 during the week of Thanksgiving. And they're ready to teach someone something new they didn't know before they walked in the store, ready to show people why going electric is beneficial, and ready to change the status quo. For many of my team members, this is their first job. This is the beginning to their professional careers. And I hope that my experience of working for Tesla will be indicative of what is to come for them. I started at the Palo Alto headquarters office and then moved to New York to open the store as an assistant store manager, and then now to open the Natick Gallery as the manager there. As the electric car market grows and as Tesla expands, I'm very much looking forward to promoting my product specialists to become assistant store managers, and then eventually to be opening up their own stores across the country. And as Mr. DeLuca mentioned, you know, if we're deciding whether this Class 1 license should be issued, based on the greater good of the community. I urge you to consider the amazing career opportunities and growth opportunities that Tesla provides for young people who want to make a difference in the world, as well as the customers who, just as much want to stand for something by owning an electric car, and to be part of a sustainable future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Robardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think this is an issue of the incredible technology and future and of this company. I think this is an issue of us issuing a Class 1 license, and if there's litigation pending, I don't feel we have the authority to issue something that possibly could be decided in the court.
To be clear, we are the licensing authority, so I think we have the authority to make a decision. And my understanding is based on the criteria that's in front of us, whether that's challenged in court or not is separate from our ability to take action tonight.
Yes, and it's really quite distinct. The issues that are before the court are not necessarily the same issues that are before this board. Your board is concerned with the Class 1 licensing criteria, and we've been through that now. There are other issues. The standing issue, for example, was brought to the court's attention, and there have been litigation, and it'll be ongoing there. I don't see that prevents this board from making the judgment that's being asked to make relative to the grant of a Class 1 license here in Natick.
I might have more, but not.
Okay. Mr. Hughes.
I just have a question for, I guess, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Blankenship. You say there's separate entities, Tesla Inc., Tesla Mass Inc., but the lessee on the facility for sales and the lessee for this facility for repairs appears to be Tesla Inc., not Tesla Mass Inc.
Well, I'll have to defer to either Mr. Blankenship or Billy Donnelly in that. I believe they've been assigned, but I can't speak to it personally because I don't know.
Okay, I mean, I don't see any assignment in here.
Good evening. My name is Billy Donnelly, and I also represent Tesla Motors as its counsel. Those leases that have not yet been assigned by Tesla Motors to Tesla Mass are in the process of being assigned. And we may have some work to do with the landlord to make that happen if there's anti-assignment clauses within the lease, but we are working to get that done.
Can we make a conditional award of the class license? Okay. Any other questions? Any other members of the public wishing to be heard on this matter? Again, please keep the comments specific to the Class 1 license and location.
Good evening, Board. My name is Richard Gill from Brigham Gill Motor Cars on Route 9. I've had the opportunity to live and work in Natick for many, many years. I appreciate the Board embracing new business and innovation. I wish other municipalities did so as well. My reason for being here is very simple. Mass law, as it relates to new car dealers, prevents a manufacturer owning a retail sales outlet. It's not about the innovative and forward-thinking company that Tesla is and the great and unique product that they're producing, because it truly is, it's the future, it's fantastic, and there's obviously a lot of very passionate people involved in the company. And but that's not what it is we're concerned about, this unique and kind of a boutique kind of product that's probably where the future is headed. What we're concerned about or I am as a dealer, my fellow dealers, it's more Honda, for example, coming to the Natick Mall, renting a space, and bypassing a local dealer. So Bernardi's, who's been in the community for 40 years, 50 years, they've made an investment in real estate, time, employees. They could be bypassed. And that's the precedent that myself and my fellow dealers are concerned about. That could have devastating consequences to not just Bernardi's Honda or the local Toyota dealer. It's, the manufacturers could take that ball and run with it in, again, devastating circumstances. That's the only precedent that we're worried about. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. That's a really important point. In peripheral conversations, I've heard people say, oh, they just don't want this new company in. And it's from a channel and a protection standpoint, consumers must be aware that the dealerships want to protect themselves from the very manufacturers of the products they sell. That's a very big factor. Thank you. Sure, please.
Hi, I'm Tom Hamilton. I'm actually a resident of Sudbury, not Natick, but I'm a consumer. I happen to own 4 cars. One of them I recently purchased from Tesla in August, and 2 of them from Barnardi, Toyota. So I'm probably one of the only ones here that actually sits on both sides of the fence. I actually thought it was unprecedented that the car dealers are sticking up for the consumers, and I'm glad to see that. I'm glad this could make that happen. But realistically, the way I look at it is, I want a choice. It's very simple. I mean, today, I can't buy a Tesla vehicle in Massachusetts. I should be able to. I know the lawyers will go back and forth about the where-tos and here-tos of contracts and ownership. But as a consumer, that's what I want. I think that, the product's good, no one's going to argue with that. And as far as the dealers go, I mean, I think the dealers, this is a new business model. I believe that, free market will decide. The dealers offer a service, they offer a value on top of, and whoever provides the best value to the consumer ultimately will win. Whether or not Tesla will prevail with their model or adopt in the future the dealer strategy, because it turns out it provides the best to the consumer, and at the end of the day, the market, if you're not getting what you want, consumers, I'm not going to buy it. So to me, I say, let them try and let's work, because I think what's going to happen is the dealers will do a better job in adding value to the consumer and try different business models, because that's what America's all about, trying new things and taking things forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well stated. Ms. May, any comments or questions from the board? Okay, one last time briefly. please, so we can
I'm
move on.
sorry to have
No,
to
it's
get
okay.
back up, but there have been...
Got a long night ahead of us.
I apologize for doing this, but there have been unequivocal statements made suggesting that a manufacturer like Tesla that has no extant dealership system in the state or in the nation is prohibited from owning or operating a sales operation in the state by statute. That's just not the case. And that is an argument that was presented at length to the Superior Court. The statute in question relates to the legacy automobile manufacturers that built their sales and distribution system on the efforts and the investments of entrepreneurs like Bernardi over 20, 30, 40 years. So a Honda manufacturer or a Toyota or a General Motors or Ford cannot open a competing sales operation to compete with that existing legacy dealership system in the state. That does not apply to a brand new company like Tesla. The statute in question is very specific in tying it to a manufacturer of the same line make, meaning a model like Chevy and General Motors competing against Chevy. So thank you. I'm sorry to.
Thank you. Okay. One brief statement, and the litigation stops here. Okay. Thank you.
Understood completely. I will keep it very brief.
Tonight's
because
litigation stops
I'm
here,
a big
yeah.
Patriots fan,
Thank you.
and I want to get home to watch that game. I helped draft the statute in both 2002 and the amendments this past year in 2012. We disagree with what Mr. Campbell says.
Expect nothing less. Thank you for clarifying. Okay. That said, pleasure of the board. Any conversation, questions, statements before we consider a motion? Mr. Ostroff.
I'd be glad to offer a motion, but I will defer. And then, and they may have some comments.
Mr. Robardi?
Just as in discussion, conversation, please, Mr. Chairman. I just feel that, and nothing personal, but that everybody should play by the same rules. And if that's what the requirement is in the state, then that's what the requirement is. And I think that's fair, and I'm just being fair with everybody. I don't want to show preference to anybody, but if that's what the state law, the statute requires, regardless of whether you're a new or an old established dealership, the state law, the statute requires that franchise law manufacturers don't own outlets. So that's how I feel about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trying to read this based on the last two sets of statements, and I'm still reading.
MGL 93B,
Yeah, this.
which is also referenced in the memo that is in front of us that we've had before. Mr. Hughes, any comments?
Any time frame on when you think these assignments can be procured? And if the board were inclined to issue a license conditionally, is that a problem? See people shaking
I was
their
going to say, if
heads.
somebody could speak to that officially.
We have our landlord here, and
Good evening. I'm Liz Ryan, the Senior Director of Leasing for General Growth Properties, primarily Natick Mall. What I can tell you is that Tesla has formally made the request.
You
This is
misunderstand me.
For the,
Not that lease.
no, the
The lease in
West Central
Watertown
Street.
and a lease on West Central Street, where Tesla Mass says they have the sales office and the repair facilities. I don't see where the statute requires anything at the Natick Mall unless somebody can disabuse me of that. Statute requires the sales office, you say, and the repair facility. That's the office on West Central Street in Natick and the repair facility in Watertown. Both of those, the lessee is not Tesla Mass, it's Tesla Inc. The one in Watertown, the lease says assignments are prohibited but shall not be unreasonably withheld. I'm not able to read through the 60-page lease from 251 West Central Street. I assume that it's also in there. I'm just looking for a time frame and what the likelihood of that happening is and whether that's a problem.
yeah, very, very simply, all three were submitted at the same time, and we have no problem with a conditional vote. No problem at all. The timeline will be very short.
Thank you. Pleasure of the board.
I move to award a Class 1 license to Tesla Motors Mass for 251 West Central.
Conditionally?
Conditional upon assignment of any lease to Tesla Motors Mass.
Second.
Any other motions?
I actually have a question, and I apologize for not thinking of this earlier. I believe somebody mentioned to me that the planning board was asking this to go back before them.
My understanding was the planning board met on this on Wednesday. I guess the question I would have that was raised and answered satisfactorily by our community development director to me was, is there anything in this application for a Class 1 license that might conflict with the planning board's issued permit, special permit to allow Tesla to market at the Natick Mall? My understanding that was not the case. So there's no violation of the mall status. And then in terms of what was heard on this location for West Central Street last Wednesday, there was no objection. I mean, my understanding was a favorable support.
Yeah, I think
of the class.
they found the zoning. in
Zoning
conformity.
was adequate for
Right.
what we want to do for a Class 1 license issuance.
Letter from the building commissioner.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
email
there
from the
is.
building
There's an email
Yeah,
from the
but
commissioner
I think
supporting
the
that. But
planning
that
board had some other issue, but
Right.
I'm not certain what it was.
so is the motion on the table?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, in discussion.
Yeah, in discussion. I completely understand the concerns by dealerships about separation between manufacturers and retailers. And this is not a unique industry. And alcohol producers cannot be distributors, and distributors cannot be retailers. And there are reasons to protect the consumers and to ensure independence and local ownership, that we have industries that have those separations. Some industries don't. In fact, most do not. I think this has been said, an area where the law is going to have to evolve to address some of these concerns about innovation. But I don't find on the facts that we have grounds to deny a license, even if it is essentially a paper barrier today between the manufacturer and the dealer. I don't think that's viable in the long term, that Tesla Motors will have hundreds of company-controlled dealerships, but is a pioneering effort and makes good sense for them to be able to completely control the culture of this innovative company. But I think, as Mr. Robardi and others have said, it's not necessarily the innovative spirit or of electric vehicle technology that we're hearing or deciding on tonight, although it's fascinating, but whether we have standing to grant this license properly, and whether there's likely to be a challenge. Seems that almost certainly there will be a challenge, but I think that's going to be more something that will have to be resolved legislatively, and not by the Natick Board of Selectmen. Thanks.
Further discussion? Mr. Robardi?
It isn't a question, again, and thank Mr. Ostroff, it isn't a question about the innovation. It isn't a question, in my mind, in my opinion, about location of service and sales. That's how that they want to operate that way. To me, that's not an issue. That's not a problem. I don't see that as being offensive or against the protection of the consumer. All I feel is that if they comply with the existing law in the state, which talks about manufacturers owning an outlet, and I don't feel that that's how the law states, that as maybe the decision was made. I think it has to be litigated. I think it has to be decided upon. I don't feel personally that I'm comfortable with voting in favor of a Class 1 license. I don't think it's up to us to maybe circumvent what is considered the state statute. I think that's something that should be done in court and decided. And once that's done, come to the Board of Selectmen, and we'll be glad to issue you a Class 1 license, knowing that we have standing to do that. Thank you. I won't speak anymore.
Thank you. Ms. Goff?
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this, and it's for the reason that Mr. Hughes has asked questions about Tesla Inc. versus Tesla Motors Inc. versus Tesla Motors Mass, or whatever the right name is. I just don't see the separation. I just don't see the separation. Again, I'm not an attorney, not even close. But when I read this Mass General Law, I'm just not certain that the that the required separation is there between the parent company and the Massachusetts. I'll say subsidiary. I'm not certain that's the right word to use. So I'm really torn, because I think the rest of it is, I think it's great technology. I don't care that the service center is X miles away, however many that might be. I think Mr. Hughes raised a couple of good points about the contracts, the leases, if you will, they've been signed by the parent company. That's not the non-parent company leasing the space to have the dealership. So I'm having trouble deciding if I can actually vote yes with the caveat that it'll be straightened out. But maybe somebody can enlighten me, Mr.
Well, I just wonder if we could just get counsel to clarify whether or not 93B was part of the litigation that was Dismissed.
Well, and if I may clarify, I thought that was the intent of my question. That's to
Well,
make sure that we were in good standing with that, so.
And the licensing matter before the board is 140, 58, and 59. The challenge that was brought in court was with respect to 93B, and the court denied the request for the injunction.
But if I may, the court denied the request for the injunction because they said that the Massachusetts Automobile Dealers Association, or whatever their right name is, didn't have standing to bring that.
Well,
They didn't say, I don't think, and I didn't read everything, they didn't say that what Tesla was doing was okay under Mass General Law 93B.
They did.
They said they did.
They did.
Okay.
On page 3
All
in the
right.
memo that we
I
have.
thought they just said, no, you don't have standing.
No, I think in the memo that we have, which is the Massachusetts State Automobile Dealers Association Incorporated and others versus Tesla Motors Mass Incorporated and another, page 3, section 2, under discussion, it's standing pursuant to general law, chapter 32B. And the finding was basically because,
Where are you?
sorry, page 3.
Page 3, yeah.
So the interpretation, as I read this, and I defer to folks with the law degrees here, in response, the defendants argue that only permits suits against affiliated manufacturers, distributors, and motor vehicles dealers. Therefore, defendants argue that because none of the plaintiffs are affiliated with Tesla, they can't seek injunctive relief pursuant to this. So at least in terms of the action that was taken, because they're not affiliated with it, they didn't have grounds.
But that
to
doesn't
pursue
say
that
to me
action.
that Tesla is meeting the requirements of 93B. It
But-
just says that the people suing didn't have the standing
And that
to bring suit.
But the footnoted comment down there provides that it's in violation for a manufacturer or distributor to own, operate either directly or indirectly a motor vehicle dealership located in the Commonwealth of the same name, make as any of the vehicles manufactured, assembled, or distributed by the manufacturer or distributor. I interpreted that, and what I heard from counsel when I asked the question, maybe I wasn't clear, whether we like it or not that it's on paper, Tesla Mass is different than Tesla Inc.
That's what's been represented to us, and as I said, I think the board is entitled to accept that representation.
Okay, so that's the purview of each individual board member. That's a fundamental deciding factor for us here, is whether you agree with that Tesla Mass is different than Tesla Inc. Okay, so that's, I just want to be
And
clear.
my concern is
Right.
I'm not
You're not convinced it
they're-
is, but I just wanted to clarify sort of where that was spelled out. Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And they do go into sort of definitional details. We have 3 pages on there of discussion about this. Yes, Mr. Hughes.
Mr. DeLuca, you agree with me that Judge Fishman didn't get to the issue as to whether or not Tesla Inc., Tesla Mass Inc. are,
He was never asked to reach that issue, no.
right, because
Exactly.
he said that the statute didn't give any authority to the plaintiffs to file that lawsuit. Okay.
Right. So that's a TBD.
Right. So what we have is 2 separate corporations filed, presumably legally, so who are separate entities, regardless of whether the officers are intertwined. And recently, we've had decisions of the United States Supreme Court that Citizens United decision, corporations are all separate entities, and they are individuals for purposes of the United States Constitution.
Right, and, you know, I would hesitate to advise this board to engage in what we call as lawyers, piercing the corporate veil. That's not the function of this board, to be doing that. Instead, you're entitled to accept the representations as made if there is a challenge and a forum to hear that challenge. It's not here.
Thank you.
Anything further?
I'm all set.
Members? I want to state, my support of the motion on the table. I come at this from a similar position as Mr. Ostroff, I think, and several folks that have spoken up about this. I'm deeply sympathetic to the gentleman that spoke on behalf of the Dealership Association, as well as one of our very supportive community members in the Gill family that is here and doing business. I don't ever expect that caliber of community member to go away. In fact, I hope it thrives and continues to. I happily purchased both of our vehicles from 2 dealers in this town, and I've had it serviced at a third. What brought me back to where I bought my car was the fact that when I was there and in crisis and participating in a call, a salesman came up to me and said, "You look like you need a quiet space to finish your call while your car is being repaired." And he put me in a quiet room so I could finish my call. That's customer service. That's why I care about the dealership where I bought my car from. I, as a consultant and as a marketing professional, am completely sympathetic and aware of the challenges that direct distribution has on a lot of different business models. We heard these arguments in the late 90s and early 2000s about .coms and how Barnes & Noble is going out of business because it's going to lose to Amazon. And it changed the game for the better for the consumer. I'm the son of somebody who historically was a financial planner as a professional and dealing with trusts and setting up corporate entities on behalf of people to protect them and to operate within the legal bounds. We are not being asked to do anything illegal or to stretch that. These are permissible legal entities by law from what I understand, and I'm supportive of that. I think we're getting into a great area of public debate that I agree with Mr. DeLuca shouldn't be ours to have the conversation. Based on the facts that we have, I'm 100% comfortable in the fact that these are 2 separate legal entities. The expectation and the motion that's in front of us is provisional on filing the appropriate legal entities to those spaces that we're looking at. But based on what's in front of us, I'm personally of support of the motion that's in front of us. That said, the motion is to grant a Class 1 license to Tesla Motors Massachusetts Incorporated, provisionally granted with the understanding that the Massachusetts entity will be the, I guess, what was the word? Assignee, designee? What's the legal term? Assignee of said lease.
2 leases.
Yes, one for the repair, one for the dealership. We're not issuing
I
the,
think the repair is already
That's not our-
signed, the very last page.
on the
Yeah,
repair.
it's in the last page.
Signed by Tesla.
Tesla Motors to Tesla Motors Mass.
That's been assigned.
Oh, it has been assigned?
Right, it's
Yeah,
I didn't-
one
I
last
didn't see it.
page, last page.
I didn't see it.
But I didn't see it for the one.
Not for West Central, right. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Passes 4-1. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there is a matter that's item 14 on your
Yes, thank you.
agenda.
So item 14 is renewal of 2013 licenses. So for Class 1, that was a line item for renewal for next year. We had a hearing for our licenses at our last board meeting. So now that we've approved this 4-1, the question is for 2013 to renew this license moving forward, just to eliminate the need to come back for a reclassification.
So moved with the same caveat, same
Second.
requirements that we've just passed.
Second.
Any other motions or discussion?
Don't need to see a track record of their
Sorry?
sales experience.
No, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's a vote.
Same,
Thank you for
same
being
opposition.
in opposition. I'm sorry, Mr.
Thank you.
Lombardi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Why don't we
Thank
take
you.
a little break?
I was going to say, why don't we
I'm sure
take a
lot of
break?
these
I know, I mean, as much as everyone here wants to stay